Hi, chemistry students. I'm going to be recording how to set up this lab, and I'll show you on the document camera that I've got set up here what it's all about. So I'm going to turn on the document camera, which you guys should see here. I'm hoping you'll be able to see this visual as I'm talking. I know you don't really see me, but I've got the document camera set up, and I'm trying to set up this chemistry of a gas activity, okay? And visually, you're going to be setting up the test tube with a clamp, utility clamp, and then you're going to have the hosing going into a collecting bottle. What we're going to use is a graduated cylinder, and your goal is to lay it flat in the water, trying to get all the air pockets up, and then we're going to be tilting it upright. I'll show you that in a minute. I want to get the clamp, the ring stand, and the utility clamp ready so that we could have the test tube all set up here. I forgot to have that ready before I got the film going. So let me get this going here. I basically am setting up the ring stand here, the ring stand with the utility clamp, so we can hold on to our test tube, okay? So you want to have your test tube here. It makes it really easy to have it attached here. We're going to use the larger test tubes in the experiment, not the regular size test tubes, but we're going to have it here. You guys are going to be keeping it here. It's easier to hold on. We are going to use a small beaker to mass it on the balance. So we'll be using this balance. We've got all these buttons. You're going to be doing the zeroing. See how it's 67 something for the grams here? Sorry for the glare, but I'm going to go ahead and zero it down. So that's the zero button, just so you're down to zero. But I'll do that in a minute with the massing part, okay? Now, you're going to have the ring stand and the clamp holding up the test tube just temporarily while you're not using it. You're going to use this tubing connected to a rubber stopper, okay? You're going to attach it to the test tube, and you're going to be putting an Alka-Seltzer tablet into the test tube. Sorry. You're going to put an Alka-Seltzer tablet into the test tube so that CO2 gas is going to travel through the tubing and go down into directly into this cylinder, graduated cylinder. Okay, now we're going to try not to have air pockets like I just put in there. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and run the demo with you just so you can visually see that. We want to try to get rid of all these air pockets. Sometimes it's hard to do that, but the best way to run the reaction is that you're going to have, I'm sorry for moving this around a lot, okay, is that you go ahead and you put the cylinder that's sideways with no air pockets in it, have it upright like this, and then have the tubing go in here. And you want not to go any further because you can't let it go anywhere near the air or you'll put air into the water. You don't want to do that, okay? But eventually you're gonna have somebody man and put the tubing into the cylinder. You're going to have somebody else of your team, somebody else manning the pellet and putting it into the test tube, okay? So you have one person manning the test tube and the pellet, and then one person holding on and watching the tubing with the cylinder, okay? Because what we're doing is we're going to be massing the pellet before in the water and then see what the difference is because all the gas bubbled away into the cylinder. So the difference of the loss of the mass of the gas is going to be the mass, and then the volume that the bubbles take over in the cylinder is going to be the volume of the gas. Okay, so we're going to measure the volume of the gas of the bubbles inside the cylinder. We're going to mass the difference of the mass after, from before and after, and I'll show you on the worksheet. Okay, so you're going to be setting up the equipment. You got to have the cylinder long ways in the water. You're going to have the tubing inside, have the test tube set up with the cylinder ready to go. You want to get a little tablet, maybe a fourth of a tablet. You want to put 1/4 water in the test tube. I'm sorry for my hands here. Again, I'm not really good with productions, but 1/4 water, okay? So you have all that set up, and then what you're going to do next, and that's going to be numbers 1 and 2, okay? Number 3, you're going to start massing, and then you're going to be recording the numbers on this side. Okay, so I'll walk you through that a little bit after as I visually show you what you're doing with the massing, okay? So you're going to take the test tube itself, take the rubber stopper off, which is what I was doing right here. I just have the test tube right here. Okay, I'm going to take it off the clamp, and I want to mass the water. I want to mass the water and the pellet, and that's going to be the before mass. Okay, but how I do that, because it's hard to hold up a test tube, is I'm going to put the I'm going to put it over here with the balance here. We're going to put the beaker on the balance, and you have to zero it. Make sure it's zeroed. And then you're going to put the test tube with the water right in there, and you're going to record that, okay? And you're going to record that number, that 65 number right here, okay? So that's going to be your first data, 65.65. And then you take that off the balance, and then you're going to be having like a piece of paper or a weighing boat on the balance. You don't ever want to put the chemicals right on the balance, I mean, the ones that you're trying to measure. And I should have weighing boats out tomorrow during the lab time, but at the moment I don't have it. So I'm putting this little piece of paper. I'm going to zero it here. I'm going to put the Alka-Seltzer tablet right on there. Okay, and I'm going to record that. So I have the first number. The first number is for the test tube and the water. And the second number is the actual pellet. So we're going to put 65, and 0.93. And what you're doing next is you're going to add these two together. You're going to add these together, and that's going to be your total before mass. Okay, so we're going to add those together, and it looks like it's about 1 gram more, but we have 66.58 as the before. Okay, so we're going to put that over to the side so we don't get the paper wet. We're going to be ready to set up in our next step. We just did step 1, 2, and 3. We're going to basically make sure everything's ready to go. We want to make sure our tubing is in the graduated cylinder, is all underwater. We want to make sure the tubing's coming out, that we have it really close to our test tube, because we want to have everything ready. So somebody is manning the tubing in the cylinder, and then someone's manning the actual pellet in putting in the water. We also want to go ahead and make it easier to go ahead and clamp it back on the clamp, just so it's taken care of. We don't have to hold it up in the beaker. Sometimes it gets top heavy. So let's put it back on the clamp. Put it back on the clamp like I'm doing, okay? Have your rubber stopper ready. Make sure your rubber tubing is staying in the cylinder, and you're going to, as soon as you got both those ready with your partner and you, okay, we're going to go ahead and put the pellet inside, which is what I'm doing here. I'm sorry about my bad videotaping, but trying to manage the camera at the same time. So we're going to put that in. We're going to set that, stomp that in really good. And then when we're doing this, go ahead and tilt your cylinder a little bit so that it's coming upright. Okay, tilt your cylinder like this. Now you don't want to let any of the air come in, so you got to keep this still underwater. But at the time, you're seeing the bubbling happening. The bubbling is happening. The bubbling is happening. It's bubbling in, and water is going out. But we want to keep this all underwater as it's bubbling. And at some point, it's going to stop, hoping that we're going to be in the range of 100 mils, because we only did 1/4 of a tablet. Okay. So we're going to let the bubbles happen. We're going to tap it a little bit, make sure all the bubbles are going in. It's still kind of fizzing, but it's bubbling really slowly. So you want to wait, tap your test tube a little bit like I'm doing here. You can't really see it because I don't have it on the camera. Okay, but I'm tapping my test tube a little bit like this. Okay, so now we actually have a volume pocket of gas. We have a volume pocket of gas. We do have some bubbling still, but not very much. But you can kind of wait here and see if any more bubbles form. They actually are forming a little bit. We don't want to let it go too long, but we can let the bubbles happen, be a little patient. I would wait at least a good 2-3 minutes after you see it really bubbling. Okay, and We're going to make sure all the bubbles are coming through. We don't want to let this go. We don't want this to fall out, because if air pockets come in, we have to do the experiment again a second time. But I think that's all the bubbling. There's a little bit more here. Possibly, a couple more bubbles waiting, but I would wait a good 2 minutes if you can. Be patient. Maybe sing a song, turn on your favorite music, that kind of thing. Okay, we still got a couple more bubbles coming out. We want to make sure all the bubbles are in there. Because see, we're making CO2 gas. We're making CO2 gas, and it's coming through. The gas is coming through around into the area here. And this volume that we're measuring in this cylinder is what we're going to do. So I think we're going to go ahead and stop. Take your tubing out without moving your cylinder. Take the tubing out very, very, very carefully. And then you're going to take it upright like I'm doing. See how I'm doing it upright like this? And now you can measure how much air, CO2 space. Okay, you want to measure that. And it looks almost at eye level like 75 mils. And so that's going to represent our volume of the gas. Okay, that represents our volume of the gas. So we're going to put down here, and on your data table, we're going to do our volume here at the bottom, and it looks like it's 75.0 mils. That's what we have. Okay. And then we have to figure out our leftover. We have to do the mass of our leftovers. Okay. So we have our volume. Just leave this cylinder alone for now. We have the measurement. It's okay if you turn it over. You can, once you have the volume of 75 or whatever it is, it might be more, it might be less. You can go ahead and just put it sideways. You can lose the gas here. Okay, just put it down. We're now going to take the test tube. We're going to take the test tube now, because this is after. This is the test tube after. Okay, and so we want to mask the test tube after. And that's going to be the after, because what happened is we did a reaction with water and Alka-Seltzer, and we made CO2 gas, and what's left is the left of the reaction. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put the go ahead and mask this. So we take the beaker, put it on, make sure it's cleaned off. Go ahead and put it on the balance. We're going to go ahead and zero it, and now we're going to put the test tube with the after amounts. This is afterwards. Okay, this is after. And so we have our after at 66.47. So we actually have all the data that we need. Let me show you what you're doing here. Okay, we have our mass of just the water in the test tube. Okay, let me put it over here because it's upside down. Let me move it around here. Sorry, it just happens to do that with the document camera. Okay, so we have our mass of our beaker before with just water, the mass of the pellet before, and we add those together to get your mass before, and then we just took and did the reaction, and this is the mass after. Okay, this is the mass after. Notice that the mass before is a little bit more than the mass after. So we've got an actual loss of mass, and that loss of mass is the difference. So you're going to subtract these two, and it looks like you've got 0.11 grams. You're going to subtract these two. You're going to subtract these two and get 0.11 grams. Okay, so you have a mass of your gas of CO2. You have a volume of CO2. Now you guys go about calculating its density. Okay, now you guys that missed the lab, this is your example of a lab. You guys that aren't in the classroom, this is your example. But for everybody else, you're going to get your own data tomorrow and the next lab day when we do it. Okay, but you're going to be setting this up with the graduated cylinder. I'll have all the instructions, but I really hope this visual helped, because you're going to be setting up the test tube. You're going to be setting up the test tube in this on the utility clamp. Okay, you're going to have it set up like this. You're going to have a test tube with 1/4 water. You're going to put the tubing with a rubber stopper in here like this. You want to have your cylinder underwater with no air pockets, and you're going to put the tubing inside the cylinder, okay? Have that all ready with no air pockets. And then you're going to take this off, put the pellet in, and then put it back on, but you want to man it so that no other air pockets come in, and then you're going to measure the volume and measure the mass after, just like I did in the video. Watch the video again if it was, you know, anything you wanted to go over to make sure you're doing it correctly, okay? Use this as a visual, guys, that are doing the lab, to make sure you're doing all the different parts of the steps, okay? Watch the video and be ready for the lab on the next day at school, okay? And for you guys that are absent, this data can help you suffice for you missing the lab. You got to see the lab, and then there are going to be some more questions at the end. And I will probably explain a little bit about that if I have to in another video, okay? I'm going to go ahead and end it now. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let's see. So I'm going to end it now, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that really helped you out with the experiment that we're doing coming up here in the classroom.